So in the previous video, I discussed these guidelines for writing your body paragraphs, maintaining the flow of your ideas, using good language conventions while you use your research or evidence, citing your sources, giving credit where credit is due. And then we also talked about that in a series of sentences that came from one source, you only need to cite that source at the end of the series of sentences. I'm going to move back then to the model paragraph that I was starting to write here. Here was my topic sentence. Sometimes being successful is simply a matter of knowing if and when to quit. My research topic is the elements of success. So this is a natural topic sentence that should be part of it. In the previous video, I discussed using introducing the reader to the source itself in a very big way. Secondly, I used paraphrasing to describe the ideas that were in the article. And then I followed the rule of that in a series of sentences from one source that's not paginated, that you only have to cite here at the end. I also then discussed that now, as a writer, as somebody who's having a discussion about success, I have to use my own ideas to bring this research back here. Thus, success can be the result of leaving a toxic or stagnant situation that is simply not working out. That said, though, I feel like I could use more research, or I could bulk up this paragraph a little more with another example from the article. So using the upside of quitting here, I'm going to continue. They talked about minor league baseball players, and they talked about specifically this man named Justin Humphreys and who he had been drafted by. But what stood out to me as a quote that I wanted to directly quote eventually was this one right here, where it says roughly 10% of American ball players who get drafted each year will ever make the majors, but probably close to 100% of them think they will. So I wanted to directly quote that because I feel like it illustrates, like, you know, the difference between opportunity and sunk cost. That's sunk cost mentality where you're just stuck where you are because I think I'm going to make it to the majors. But that said, how will I write about this? Well, one of the things that I'm going to do then is I'm going to once again introduce the idea that I want to introduce, which is that the article says is talking about minor league baseball players. So I'm going to use a transitional phrase similarly. The podcast addresses the situations of minor league baseball players. The article states, and now I'm going to directly quote it, roughly 10% of American, I can like copy. That's one of the reasons why I like digital sources, and then I'm going to paste, and then I have to change the font to the text. Now I'm going to delete this this period at the end because I have to. I feel like I should give credit where credit is due whenever I directly quote. So I'm going to obviously pick Freakonomics Radio as my citation there. So similarly, the podcast addresses situations of minor league baseball players. The article states roughly 10% of American ball players who get drafted each year will ever make the majors, but close to 100% of them think that it will. Now, that's not the end of the discussion. I haven't finished where I'm going with this. So, furthermore, most minor league, furthermore, or we could do this. We say, according to the article, most minor league baseball players struggle financially to make ends meet while pursuing the dreams of making the major leagues. Furthermore, the likelihood of success is very low, and therefore the article reasons that quitting is probably a far better option for most of those players. And so I finished my discussion of the source, so now I need to definitely cite it again, and then I hit period. And so now I need to bring that back then to my own analysis about success. Therefore, knowing when to quit a losing battle can sometimes lead to better success. Those are my own analysis, but in this particular case then, similarly, the podcast addressed situations with minor league baseball players. The article states, and now notice that I used a quote. I led into the quotation mark. This came from directly from the article, and then I gave credit where credit is due. I feel like anytime you directly quote, you should probably err on the side of citing that. According to the article, most minor league baseball players struggle financially to make ends meet while pursuing the dreams of making the major leagues. Furthermore, the likelihood of success is very low, and therefore the article reasons that quitting is probably a far better option for most of those players. And so that this is how you use good language conventions. A series of of information sentences came from the same article. Kind of when you direct quote, I think it's not an unsafe thing to make sure that you cite at that point. But this is once again exhibiting the major guidelines here that maintain the flow of your ideas while discussing the research. Use good language conventions and commas effectively. Use your quotation marks correctly. Make sure you cite your sources. And just remember that in a series of sentences from the same source, you can just cite one time. If you directly quote, I think that you should probably put the citation after the direct quote as well, to let the reader know where you got that direct quote from. So there it is.